this whole concept of computing as a profession, and we have things like accounting, medicine, and law, which are recognized professions in virtually every country of the world. So do you think that computing should be a recognized profession on par with those professions like accounting, medicine, and law, with demonstrated professional development and adherence to a code of ethics and a disciplined process for those who breach it, personal responsibility, public accountability, quality assurance, and recognized credentials?
I absolutely do. I've been part of the profession and a member of KIPS since the early 60s, the Canadian Information Processing Society. I'm very fortunate and pleased to be now a fellow of the Canadian Information Processing Society. And absolutely, when you think of the impact of computing, I mean, over the years it's been important. Now it's at the heart of everything. And it really is a profession and requires professional standards, testing, and accountability, certainly. So I'm 100% behind that idea, and KIPS has been pushing that idea, and in fact, of course, had accreditation and testing and different skills and different capabilities for many, many years since.
Shift directions a bit here and talk about professionalism and what that means. So is professionalism necessary, and why?
Professionalism is absolutely necessary. And the why is because when you look at what definition of a profession is, that's, one of the foundations, I think, of a society. And a profession is a body of knowledge, an agreed way to apply the body of knowledge, ethics and standards, ensuring that training for the people who are doing whatever we're talking about is appropriate, certification, recertification. There may be an exclusive right to practice. And all of that is very necessary for doctors and lawyers and accountants and engineers, people upon whom many, many people rely for very important things. You wouldn't want an unprofessional, uncertified, untrained engineer spending $3 billion to build a bridge across a river only to have it collapse a month later because they weren't properly trained. You wouldn't want a surgeon to operate on you or one of your family members if that surgeon hadn't been trained and vetted and tested by some third-party organization. And who is the third-party organization except the professional institute, the College of Physicians, the Law Society, whatever? Professionalism, I think, is absolutely essential with a capital P, but equally essential with a small p. Because with a small p, professionalism means the individual takes responsibility for the quality of the work, doesn't look at the clock, they look at the result, considers their client's interest above their own interest, is committed to doing the best possible job in circumstances, takes responsibility for their own training and knowledge, and won't even accept an engagement if they don't have the training and the knowledge. So small p professionalism is basically another way of saying being very grown up and doing a good job, and big P professionalism is the way society protects itself and assures that the really important things are done properly.
And I think that's something that as a society and as an industry, we have to think long and hard about. Years ago, as I say, there was very little likelihood that the work we did could cause financial or personal harm. And now with financial systems being largely based on IT, health systems largely based on IT, transportation, virtually every essential part of our infrastructure, whatever it is highly dependent on technology. And that means the people that work on that technology are now in a position of incredible responsibility. I just think part of what we have to do as a maturing industry is make sure that our practitioners and professionals are aware of their responsibilities and to protect the public from the kinds of harm that can happen. And in other industries like engineering and accounting and by and large every other professional society or industry, there's been significant challenge in that industry, and the response has been to create a society to get to regulate or to be regulated by governments or other bodies. And I don't want IT to have some disaster to precipitate that kind of activity. I want to be able to say that we're moving forward actively towards professionalism and professional behavior without some natural or unnatural disaster precipitating that work.
But also, I think the need to
to promote the profession as a profession, not simply work. And the very distinct need then for an interest in certifying the professional base that we have within the country, and in participating in global efforts where we look for standardization of the certification process so that we can recognize each other's capabilities from country to country. These all become very important in a world which is increasingly global in the way that it behaves. And it's very important so that the working population that is present in Canada that does choose an IT profession can find work and be recognized for the capability that they represent.
Certification process. So this kind of naturally leads to this question, and is what is the value of professional association for a computing professional?
Well, I just answered the question in part. A professional association like the IEEE, the British Computer Society, KIPS in Canada, the Canadian Information Processing Society, the association supports and maintains the body of knowledge. They administer the discipline and the complaint management process. They advocate for the profession and for the professional. They have the examinations and the recertification process, so that at the end of the day, if you're a computer professional and you want to differentiate yourself, you may have all the technical skills that your neighbor does, but the fact that you've become a member of this professional association and gone the extra mile to get the certification mean to your employer and to the public that you're willing to put more on the line, basically. You're willing to put more on the line with respect to the quality of your work, the extent to which you can be relied upon, the ethics by which you conduct yourself, than someone who hasn't gone through the certification process or hasn't become a member of a professional society. And the professional societies provide so much more. They provide networking opportunities, educational opportunities, a starting point for research. If you're a computer professional and you've got a problem with a government regulation or with anything basically related to the professional, chances are you're not going to have the time or the wherewithal to go testify before a parliamentary committee. But you can write a letter to your professional society, and if enough people write letters saying approximately the same thing, your professional society will go and testify in front of the parliamentary committee and make known your views on that particular matter. And I know I've been involved, at least peripherally, in some of that work. And the government does listen. They do change draft legislation. They do alter or eliminate regulations that enough people think are inappropriate or counterproductive. So professional association gives an individual practitioner a much larger voice.
And so I've just had great opportunities in my career to serve in the IT industry and to network with people and see the great opportunities that organizations like KIPS, through their tremendous networking ability, affords practitioners.
Question then into Canada, and can you specifically talk about the value of KIPS?
Well, KIPS is both a national and a provincial organization. In Canada, it's the only IT professional association that has actually been mandated by statute. It's in the law. It does everything that I mentioned previously. It's a forum for knowledge sharing. It manages a body of knowledge. It has a disciplinary process, a certification process. KIPS accredits university programs so that students very early on can be inculcated into a professional way of doing things and a professional way of looking at their work. I mean, we have thousands of members across Canada. KIPS provides a great opportunity for networking and for employers. It provides a great sort of central clearinghouse if an employer is looking for a certain kind of professional. I mean, there are some people who would say that having a certification, being a member of KIPS would lead to higher salary, more chance of promotion. We certainly don't have any statistic to confirm that, but I think anecdotally that's the case. Two identical candidates, one of whom is certified and a member of KIPS and the other who isn't. I suspect KIPS member probably has a better chance of moving forward in their career. Another thing is that KIPS is different from sort of other computer-related organizations in its focus on ethics and professionalism. KIPS doesn't provide technical certification per se. say, you don't join KIPS to become a network administrator or a security professional or a specialist in Unix. When you get certified by KIPS, and KIPS has two certifications, the ISP, the Information Systems Professional, and the ITCP, the Information Technology Certified Professional, which is an international designation. When you get either of those designations, it's basically a statement that you understand technical and technological processes, but you also understand the intersection between business, user need, processes, and technology. A KIPS certified professional has a technical view and a broader view, and I think that's one of the special values of the KIPS certification.
Well, I've been involved with KIPS for many, many years as well, and one thing I like about KIPS is, or a great reason to get involved is KIPS is helping to promote professionalism within the computing industry in Canada. So, I think that's a great reason to be involved. KIPS has industry certifications as well, the ISP and ITCP designation. So, like PMI, there's a certification that, maybe will help an individual raise their personal profile or stand above others. Again, for me, the big I guess benefit or what I liked about being involved with KIPS is the networking with peers and seeing others in the industry and catching up with them and sharing experiences. There's always an education and learning component to associations, which is valuable. And for me, I not only was involved with KIPS as a member, but I was on the board for many years. And so for me, the other reason I got involved was just to give back to our local IT community, which was.
Say top recommended resources are, I would say, obviously, KIPS certified professionals. And I'd say, to me, that's because they are versatilists. They're able to handle a broad range of tasks. They have a depth of knowledge. They are well experienced for what they do. And they know when to call in another resource. I know the CFO of the IP3P had said to me recently, that's Roger Hart, he said, we're like the medical profession. Your family doctor knows when to call in a specialist. And I believe we are like that. We are able to identify when we need someone with a special skill. We are able to provide good advice and from the IT perspective, but we recognize that there are those that we need to call on with sometimes specific technology, experience, or some particular best practice. And so we call them in, and we know when to call them in.
So when you say professional behavior, I take it meaning people getting some sort of basic education involved in some skills development leading to accredited and fully sort of sanctioned certification, and then also adhering to demonstrated continuing professional development, and also adhering to a code of ethics and supporting best practices and common standards. That kind of thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So I didn't choose physicians or doctors accidentally. I genuinely believe that when people think about physicians or doctors, they do understand that they need to have those individuals be trustworthy, to understand their work, to recluse themselves or decline when they're feeling not qualified, or to refer to somebody with different credentials, to continually upgrade their skills, because they have and are in a position to do harm, and they understand that the position they have in society is one of trust and one where it's fragile. If there was significant challenges over time and ethics weren't maintained and credentials weren't maintained and people didn't have good educations and were in positions where they arguably weren't qualified, then public at large would lose trust, would lose faith, and we can't in our industry afford for that to happen or start. So absolutely, all those things, ongoing education, not just completing a degree, commitment to ethics, mentoring and supporting, and having a path or a career path that was understandable and people at an early age could see themselves having a career and what that career might look like.
So I guess then KIPS is involved in accreditation efforts with schools like colleges and universities and institutes.
Absolutely, for exactly those reasons. And we try and reflect what we believe to be our industry requirements and industry standards. We look not just at the program itself, but we look at the faculty. We look at the institution. We talk to alumni. We talk to students, because all of those give insight into what the experience is going to be for the student and how well equipped that individual is going to be coming out of the program to participate and contribute and to grow and learn. Absolutely. Education is a key element of industry maturity and growth.
Is there a role for professional certification, and why?
Absolutely, again. Professional certification doesn't necessarily, by the way, mean exclusivity of right to practice. And information technology is a great area to explore that. But certification basically means a third-party organization, presumably objective and at arm's length, has said this individual has certain skills, knowledge, practical experience, ethical standards, has passed the exam, and has committed to maintain standards going forth at the risk and the penalty of losing their certification if they don't. I mean, that to me seems like an excellent way to ensure quality. And as I said, in technology, for example, you have certified information technology professionals, and Canadian Information Processing Society is one organization that grants certification. And you have uncertified people who work in the field. And nothing says, all things being equal, that an uncertified IT professional with comparable experience, education, ethics, etc., is not going to do as good a job. Absolutely nothing says that. But if you're an employer or a regulator and you want some assurance of that, how are you going to get assurance? By looking at a guy's CV and saying, well, that CV is equivalent to the certified guy's CV? Well, maybe. But it seems to me certification is a very short and effective way to do all the preliminary research, rather, ensure that someone is qualified to do work, and a lot easier than doing all the legwork and checking all the references and making sure that the CV is accurate, so that the guy who's not certified but has equal skill is given the same consideration. Certification is important at another level also. I mean, professions have certification to protect the public, because again, these same two individuals, and let's say in IT, one of whom is certified and one of whom is not, the certified professional does something wrong. He stands to be sanctioned, to lose his license, be penalized financially or otherwise, to have his name published in the paper. The uncertified professional does something wrong, may or may not get fired, but the repercussions are a lot less. So the certified professional, in reality, has much more skin in the game, because they've much more invested in the certification and much more to lose. Another aspect of certification is the third-party component, where you've got an institute of professionals, the Canadian Information Processing Society, the College of Physicians, Surgeons, whatever. You have a big organization with a governance structure in place, basically standing behind the work. As an end consumer, I think that gives me much more comfort. As a member of the public, it gives me much more comfort. And the institute or the organization provides a mechanism for my protection if, for whatever reason, I'm unhappy with how the professional has been acting. So I think that's another part of the third part.
I noticed in your background you got your ISP, or Information Systems Professional designation. Can you go into more detail about that?
Well, that was very important. I did seek that designation fairly early in the process. And CIPS has been around for a long time. It's really had certification for in fact, you would probably know how long, but to me it appears, I'm thinking probably 15 years, 17 years. I sought it early on, first and foremost, as a way of personally coming to grips with what it was that I was doing. It was an opportunity to almost self-test myself as to the credibility of the career journey that I was on. It was also an excellent opportunity to have that validated by your peers, and to have sort of a critical assessment of the process of building what I thought at the time was a pretty good career, but clearly there wasn't that many formal opportunities for that kind of input. When I see the designation ISP after somebody's name who I may not know, I instantly know something about that individual, and it certainly provides a starting point for conversation and discussion. And I probably have hired hundreds of people through the 30 years that I've been active in the industry, and I can tell you that it really helps when you see that sort of designation, because it's almost an implied stamp of approval. it certainly tells me that I'm working with somebody who has been serious about their career. In Canada, KIPS has somewhat through design, and I think most leaders of KIPS through the years would agree there was some accident to this, but it is now the only really viable accreditation facility and professional association for IT people in Canada. It's an organization that has an extensive and fairly mature, I've seen it, a good connection to equivalent bodies around the world. It's an organization which I would agree today does not necessarily count all IT professionals as members, but has the goal of embracing as many of these individuals as possible in the country. It's the organization that needs to be supported. It's the organization that needs to be leveraged. It's the organization that needs to be challenged to very credibly and constructively and appropriately to create a base of certified professionals in this country that are the envy of the world, and to work with that group so that they're aware of the collective competence they represent, and then to continue to move the bar higher. It is very badly needed, and at the same time, I believe that they should KIPS should also really have a larger view of the global consequence of certification of the IT industry as a whole. And I know that they're working in tandem with other organizations around the world to get standardization of competencies, because what we clearly don't want to have happening with IT professionals is what's going on with legal and engineering and doctors, where there's inability to move from country to country and things of that sort, or an inability to recognize each other's credentials. So we should in tandem be working on that as well, which actually I'm aware there is various efforts going on to do so.